Sakeem, we're live.
So live. Sergeants, will you begin your recordings?
According to the computer started, stream looked good.
Thank you. Cloud is up. Okay, great. Good morning and welcome to today's New York City Council hearing on housing and buildings jointly with contracts. Please, will everybody attended, could you please turn on your videos? To limit disruptions, could you please place electronic devices on vibrate or silent mode? If you want to submit testimony, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. Again, that is testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you for your cooperation. Chairs, we may begin.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Robert Cornegy, Chair of the Committee on Housing and Buildings. Thank you all for joining this joint hearing with the Committee on Contracts, chaired by my friend, Councilmember Benjamin Kalos. I'd like to thank my co-chair for hosting this important hearing with me. Today, the committees are holding a hearing on the status of minority and women-owned business enterprises and their participation in the development of affordable housing in New York City. It is common knowledge that there is persistent need for more affordable housing in this city in order to better meet the need of some of the city's most vulnerable populations. But the need for greater equity in affordable housing isn't limited to who has access to that housing. It also concerns how that affordable housing is developed and who gets to participate in development. Housing development is with many industries. It's still a nearly exclusively white industry. Black developers face particular hurdles accessing capital, networking opportunities, and other valuable resources. HPD has a number of programs and initiatives to address these disparities in the world of affordable housing, including professional development, inclusion programs, loans, and the MWBE-focused RFP. Despite these programs, HPD appears to be falling much short of the goals to increase minority representation and participation in affordable housing development, especially with Black and Brown developers. Each year, the City Comptroller publishes a report issuing letter grades to city agencies on their success in spending on MWBEs. This year, HPD was graded a D, its lowest grade since 2014. Today, the committees expect to receive answers from HPD on the efforts to improve MWBE participation in affordable housing development. Something is clearly not going right, and we want to know what it is and how to fix it. I'm personally interested to know why HPD is particularly failing with Black and Brown and women-owned businesses. As I mentioned, affordable housing is meant to serve the city's most vulnerable populations, those with the lowest incomes, which too often are Black and Brown neighbors. There's something wrong when the providers of that housing are almost exclusively white. I'd like to thank my fellow committee members that will hear read from committee counsel. Please, Janan, if you could just tell me who's in the room. I can see obviously Ben Kalos, Carlina Rivera, Councilmember Farrah Lewis. Am I missing someone?
Councilmember Brooks Powers is here as well, Chair.
Good morning, Councilmember Brooks Powers. Councilmember Cabrera is also joined us this morning. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to our co-chair for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair Robert Cornegy, for your service over the past 8 years in the City Council. I've been proud to work with you on calling attention to the abuse of third-party transfer in your role as Housing and Buildings Chair, our shared oversights over the city's MWB program, and fighting for our public schools as graduates of our New York City public schools ourselves, not to mention as proud parents of public school students. Hey, we even dress alike. Even though I question whether you are a real otaku, and you never accepted my challenge for basketball with Ben, which I believe was entirely out of a very reasonable fear of being decimated by me and my staff, I'm proud to call you a colleague and friend. I'd also like to take a moment to thank the tremendous work done by the Contracts Committee staff in preparation for this hearing, and indeed for the entire legislative session, Legislative Counsel Alex Polniff, Policy analyst Leah Skripiak, who is actually promoted to council on a different hearing she is currently moderating. I'm kidding about the council part. Finance unit head John Russell has actually been working with me over the past 8 years, including when I was on GovOps, as well as our former policy analyst Cassie Addison, who is now with Jamani Williams, and former finance analyst Andrew Wilbur, Peter Butler, and Frank Sarno. I also like to thank my legislative team, my counsel Wilfredo Lopez, Adam Bermudez, who's come in and filled in as our legislative director, my chief of staff, Jesse Towson, for all of their efforts throughout this council. I'm Ben Kalis, and I have the privilege of chairing the Contracts Committee. I'd like to thank all the members of both committees, the administration and the MWB Affordable Housing Development Committee for coming together to hold this virtual hearing. For those of you who are watching via the live stream, you can feel free to participate in this hearing by tweeting me at Ben Kalos and Chair Robert Cornegy at Rob. What is your Twitter handle?
RC for BK at Twitter.
Great. Now, this hearing marks the final opportunity for these two committees. We'll have this session to hear about challenges facing minority and women-owned businesses community, and particularly experience that MWB developers have in getting awarded city and construction contracts for affordable housing. As Chair Cornegy mentioned, HPD offers several different programs to promote MWB's first construction projects, and especially for affordable housing. Whether it's the extremely low and low income affordable program, ELA, the Neighborhood Cooperative Program, NCP, the multifamily housing rehabilitation loan program, or one of the city's various tax incentives for affordable housing development, such as Article 11, there are plenty of grants or low interest loan programs or tax abatement programs designed to spur additional affordable housing in the city. Some of these subsidies can come out to millions, usually somewhere around several $100,000 per unit, but I've seen them get pretty high. HPD's MWBE build-up program promotes MWB contracts and city development projects, and HPD's several new restrictions on affordable housing developers, such as restricting responses to RFPs for city-owned affordable housing sites to MWB or the equitable ownership requirement instituted last year, are all steps in the right direction. However, the case remains that MWB contractors are woefully underutilized when getting awarded city contracts. In the city's controllers making the grade report from the past October, HPD was granted an overall D rating in achieving its MWB targets during fiscal year 2021, down from much more respectable B grade the year before. While HPD did reach or exceed its target in some areas, it outright failed in other areas, such as awarding a mere 1.26% of its MWB target for construction contracts to Black-owned firms, a mark that totaled just shy of $28,000 for the entire fiscal year. That's just insulting. Now, I didn't need the report to know that. As the HPD may remember, I started out this session with a little-known land use subcommittee on planning dispositions and concessions. As you may have read in Politico, and as HPD definitely remembers, I used these hearings to hold courtroom dramas as I pressed HPD and developers on projects, particularly on subsidies, local high requirements, the racial and gender makeups of the construction companies that were doing the work, particularly their executives, and of course, their MWBE fulfillment. Leading into this hearing, I'm going to ask one big question, and I may actually have to step out, but the big question I'll have for HPD is during each hearing, I would often press developers to tell us who the MWBE firms would be on the projects. And so I'd like to ask, and I want this answer during the hearing, so you have time to get it right now. Of the developers who had an MWB partner when they came before the Planning Dispositions Concessions Committee, how many of those developers ended up meeting their MWBE goal? On the second question would be, for all the developers who showed up at the committee to get Article 11 and millions in tax abatements and other benefits, who said, oh, we will meet our MWBE requirement later, how many of them actually met it? And as a big question, why can't we require every affordable housing developer as part of their RFP to come to HPD and to the council with the MWBE firms as part of their package? With that, I'll turn it over to our moderator, Committee Counsel Alex Polinoff, to go over some of the procedural items.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair mentioned, I'm Alex Polinoff, Counsel to the City's Council's Committee on Contracts. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that you will be on mute until you are called upon to testify, at which point you will be unmuted by our host. During the hearing, if council members would like to ask a question, please use the Zoom raise hand function and we will call on you in order. We will be limiting council member questions to 5 minutes, including responses to those questions. We will first be hearing testimony from the administration, which will be followed by council member questions. This will then be followed by testimony from members of the public. Today, the Department of Housing Preservation and Development's Assistant Commissioner and Agency MWBE Officer, Dhanraj Singh, will be testifying. I will now administer the oath. After administering the oath, I will call on you to affirm it for the record. So, Mr. Singh, please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions?
I do.
Thank you. You may begin when ready.
Beforehand, I just want to make sure we have acknowledged Councilmember Brooks Powers and Councilmember Rivera. You now may begin.
All right, good morning, Chairs Cornegy and Kalos, and members of the Committee on Housing and Buildings and Contracts. My name is Dhanraj Singh, and I am the Assistant Commissioner of Economic Opportunity and Regulatory Compliance. I also serve as the agency MWBE officer at the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. Thank you first for the opportunity to testify on the agency's effort to grow the number of MWBE firms driving our city's affordable housing efforts, to strengthen their capacity, and also to improve their competitiveness. As all of you know too well, New York City faces a long-standing housing crisis that has been made all the more urgent in the wake of COVID-19. As the city works to rebuild from the pandemic, HPD is looking hard at the devastating health and economic impacts, as well as the deeply embedded racial and economic inequities laid bare by COVID-19. We know that safe, quality, and affordable housing is critical for the health and stability of our residents and the prosperity of neighborhoods in which they live. And we are more focused than ever on what we can do to ensure an equitable recovery for all New Yorkers. Since Mayor de Blasio launched the Housing New York Plan in 2014, New York City has accelerated the construction and preservation of affordable housing to levels not seen in 30 years. We inherited an impressive public-private production machine capable of building and preserving approximately 15,000 affordable homes per year. Over the last 8 years, with new funding and tools, the city increased that capacity to finance the creation or preservation of 25,000 affordable homes per year, a rate the city has never achieved before, to fulfill the mayor's goal of financing the creation and preservation of 300,000 affordable homes by 2026. Throughout the pandemic, HPD and our partners at the New York City Housing Development Corporation continued to push forward our affordable housing production with a sharpened focus on the most vulnerable New Yorkers and on achieving greater racial equity and inclusion, thanks to the leadership of Chair Cornegy and all our partners on the New York City Council, the tireless efforts by our HPD team, our partner agencies, and many others, we have financed more than 195,000 affordable homes and apartments as of June 2021 in every borough and in every single community district. To accelerate and sustain this increased level of housing production, the administration has also sought to expand the capacity of the affordable housing industry, and at the same time to make it more diverse and inclusive. This work requires strong partners who reflect the diversity of the city's many neighborhoods, and MWBs and nonprofits often have deep roots in these communities. HPD is therefore deeply committed to promoting the participation of minority and women-owned business enterprises as well as the not-for-profit community development corporations that have played an important role in the city's neighborhoods over the past decades in the development and management of affordable housing subsidized under city-sponsored programs. In 2014, we launched the Building Opportunity Program, featuring a capacity building course designed for MWBEs and nonprofit developers seeking opportunities and exposure to best practices in affordable housing development. The course exposes participants to affordable housing development and finance, asset and property management, and how to position their businesses for effective joint ventures and public-private partnerships. Since 2014, HPD has hosted 5 classes of participants, totaling more than 110 firms served. We created the MWBE Build-Up Program specifically to increase contracting opportunities for certified MWBEs in HPD, HDC subsidized affordable housing projects. This program requires developers and borrowers to spend at least a quarter of HPD, HDC subsidy on certified MWBEs over the course of design and construction of projects where HPD, HDC contributes $2 million or more in subsidy. Since its launch in 2017, the program has delivered more than $1.1 billion in goal spending towards MWBEs across 239 projects. And through the HPD Build-Out Program, HPD has been aiding its development partners in identifying potential contractors or professional service providers for work on affordable housing projects. It also hosts a seminar series on a range of topics to create a better understanding of the project development cycle with the goal of increasing contractors' project readiness and capacity. To address the disparity in MWBE developers' participation, HPD champions state legislation that now permits the agency to take additional steps to encourage MWBE's participation in the affordable housing development market. The legislation enabled the creation of a competitive pre-qualified list of MWBE developers and a dedicated pipeline of city-owned sites that were included in the first ever MWBE Building Opportunity RFP in 2015. In 2017, HPD announced the designation of 6 teams, most of which participated in the agency's Building Opportunity Initiative, to develop 600 affordable homes on vacant city-owned sites in Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Manhattan. Proposals included a mix of supportive housing and senior housing, a local farm and fresh food services, a high school leadership academy, an LGBT community center, and a tech incubator. 4 of these 6 projects have now closed. Separately, 25% of all RFPs awarded on public sites have had MWBE involvement. In April of this year, we issued a second RFP exclusively for MWBE developers to transform 2 city-owned sites in Prospect Heights, Brooklyn, into affordable housing. The 2 completely affordable housing projects will create approximately 180 new affordable homes, mainly serving low-income families, with 1 site dedicated to homes for seniors as part of the city's Senior First initiative. To further increase the financial and ownership stake of MWBEs and not-for-profits in affordable housing work, in 2020, HPD introduced a new equitably ownership rule, requiring an MWBE or nonprofit partner holds a minimum of 25% ownership stake in any affordable housing projects awarded on public lands. We also repositioned the New York City Acquisition Fund to exclusively finance projects led by MWBEs or nonprofits with at least a 51% ownership stake. This $200 million public-private affordable housing loan fund has offered flexible bridge loans to affordable housing developers to acquire vacant sites, unoccupied buildings, and finance pre-development work since its establishment in 2006. The recent repositioning now helps reduce one of the key barriers for MWBEs and nonprofit developers, which is access to capital. As the city continues to produce affordable housing at a record pace, there is a growing demand for qualified marketing agents that can advertise and lease up affordable homes. In response, HPD partnered with Goldman Sachs, LISC New York City, and Enterprise Community Partners to introduce the Pathways to Opportunity program. That's a new training and certification program to build the capacity of marketing agents. The first phase of the initiative was designed to increase the supply of MWBEs and not-for-profits who are qualified to serve as marketing agents by preparing them to apply for HPD recently released Qualified Marketing Agent RFQ. HPD has provided free training to roughly 32 MWBE firms and nonprofits to date. This training and certification allows MWBEs to be more competitive in breaking into the growing marketing agent industry for Housing Connect lotteries. The second phase of the Pathways to Opportunity program seeks to create affordable housing marketing career pathways for low-wealth New Yorkers, particularly those currently living in affordable housing, through a workforce development program. The program is geared towards granting access to employment in marketing, affordable housing, and LIHTC compliance. A competitive request for proposal was recently issued in partnership with Enterprise to identify a workforce provider to refine and implement the new Housing Career Pathway Initiative. Now, our efforts to create opportunities and promote the use of New York City certified MWBEs on our development projects are only half the story. The agency undertakes considerable effort to promote the use of MWBEs on our procurement opportunities. Since 2017, the agency has procured more than $66 million in goods and services from MWBE vendors. In fiscal year 2021 alone, despite COVID-19, the agency recorded its highest procurement spendings of more than $18 million on MWBE vendors, a testament to our commitment to the success of New York City MWBEs. These spendings no doubt provide critical resources to our MWBEs to ensure they not only recover, but bounce forward in the post-COVID-19 economy. To address disparities once again in utilization, the agency has and continues to take numerous measures, including targeted outreach, capacity building and training, technical support, and systematic reviews of internal processes to ensure more equitable utilization. There is no question that housing production is an economic engine that supports countless businesses, and all New Yorkers would have an equal opportunity to participate. HPD welcomes feedback and ideas as we continue to advance these and other initiatives to help increase the number and expand the capacity of the MWBEs driving the city affordable housing efforts. In closing, I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to our continued partnership as we seek ways to help New Yorkers pull through and get to the other side of this crisis as we work towards a more affordable and equitable city. And with that, we will now take your questions.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner Singh. We will now turn to questions from the chairs. Chairs, as a reminder, you will be in charge of muting and unmuting yourself during this question and answer period. Chairs, you may begin.
I want to thank Chair Cornegie for indulging me. I have a item that could not be rescheduled. I want to start by acknowledging Councilmember Rosenthal, Councilmember Barron, Councilmember Jonah, and Councilmember Grodenchik. I would like to get the answers to the 3 questions that I asked. So when I was chair of planning dispositions and concessions, I pressed developers to ask about their MWBE commitments up front. How many of the developers that had MWBE partners actually developed the project with those MWBE partners and met or exceeded their goals?
Am I on mute? Okay. Thank you, Councilman, for that question. The breakdown of that question, unfortunately, I do not have the data with me at the moment. I would have to defer to responding to your office at a later date. What I can say, however, is that for all our development projects that requires MWB participation, we have a very rigorous compliance process in place to ensure that we're not waiting until the end of a project completed, but beforehand, from the beginning, from the time a contract is closed and it goes through the implementation process, we monitor these projects very closely to ensure that they're meeting their participation goals that is assigned to that project.
So let me flip the question. Are you aware of anyone who lied under oath before my committee who had an MWB partner that then, for whatever reason, chose not to meet their MWB goals, even though they had a partner in hand?
Thanks for that clarification. As I sit here before the committee, I do not know of any such situation.
That's what I figured. So let's just guess that we're probably at 90 or 100% for those projects. Now for the other projects, and so let's just call it half or more of the projects that didn't have an MWB partner at the time that they were seeking their Article 11 and other tax abatements from the City Council, who still didn't have an MWBE partner leading up to the closing. Do you know if every single one of them met their MWBE requirements? Because the controller's report would indicate not.
Councilman, thanks again for clarifying. Like I said, I'm not aware of an incident at this moment where the contractor has not, on any given project, has not reached the goal. What I can say is that currently we are looking at those details and combing through the data. So I suspect in a matter of not so long into the future, we'll have that details and those breakdown of data that we can better appraise the question.
I love the fact that you keep saying data. That makes me happy. Some people say data, some people say data, that's fine. I watch Star Trek, it's a problem. Is the HPD data that is on the open data portal, is that something that can be relied upon? Is that true and accurate information that you're putting out on open data?
And Councilman, can you repeat the question, please?
Is the data that HPD is putting out on open data something that is true, accurate, and can be relied upon?
My direct response to that is that I would not see a reason at this present moment why that would not be the case. However, the fact that the specific data in question may be something that I'll have to take a look at before responding more precisely to it.
It's a very lawyerly question. It's a question we ask before we introduce evidence. It's just that old habit. In your testimony, you said since its launch in 2017, the program has delivered more than 1.1 billion in goal spending towards MWBs across 239 projects. 239 projects sounds like a lot, but when I go to HPD's open data platform, where I look at Housing New York units by project, and I filter to 2017 forward, so that's 1,744 projects, and 239 projects out of that number just that's about 13% of the projects had an MWBE, and that just seems like it's not even close at all. That the number's closer to 1,800. So a third of that would be 600 projects, and you're down at 239. I don't know if that's something to be proud of. Do you know why there weren't MWBE participation in the other 1,500 or so projects?
So thanks again for your question, Councilman. Again, the precise numbers that you are referencing, I would have to take a look at that and do some reconciliation to see how that relates to the numbers that I'm looking at. But the numbers that I'm looking at, and like I said, I have no reason to disbelieve the numbers. I'll have to basically look at them to see whether they're reporting on the same thing and if there is some mix up with terminologies that is used. But the numbers that I am looking at shows that the total number of projects from 2017, and again, this could be depending on how they're counting the number of projects, is 239, with a total MWB goal commitment spendings of $1.1 billion. And to date, we have already recorded over $1 billion in those commitment spendings.
And do you have a count of the total number of projects since 2017, or just the MWB related?
So this is just the MWB related that I have in front of me.
Okay, so anyone who's interested in following along online, just go to HPD's website, click About, go to Metrics and Open Data, and under Housing Development, Housing New York by Project, click that. It'll open up the open data set, which shows a total of 2,817 projects since 2014, 1,744. I would just say that HPD is woefully deficient, and that part of the problem is projects aren't being required to meet their MWB requirement at the outset. So I guess last question before I turn it back to the chair for him to run the remainder of the hearing.
Before you go on, I just want to piggyback off of your question and ask to drill down a little bit deeper. Commissioner Singh, with how many of those 200 or so MWB contracts are prime? Because that's also a really serious issue that we're having as MWBE, people who represent MWBE. I'm curious as to how many of that number, which our data guru, Ben, has adequately pointed out the discrepancies between the numbers. I need to know actually in that very small number, how many of those are primes. So while you're doing your research and getting back to us, please get back to us when how many of those are also prime contracts. Sorry, Ben.
Oh, you don't have to apologize. It's like amazing question, and I think that is the heart of this hearing. So I guess my final question is there a reason why HPD can't require that any applicant, whether it is a prime developer being an MWBE or a non-MWB developer, actually list the names of the MWBE's subs on their contract as part of their RFP application? And if it's not included, then deem it incomplete.
Thank you, Chair, Councilman, for that question. And the specific response to your question would be something that is outside of my scope of responsibilities. But again, I am happy to take the question and to follow up with you with a response at a later time.
If you can provide it to both of us as chairs after the hearing, and I'm sure there will be others. I want to apologize for having to step out of this important hearing. I leave this in capable hands with our Housing and Buildings Chair. And thank you, Rob, for everything. Turn it over now.
I'll talk to you soon, Ben. I'm going to ask a few questions, and then I see that we've also been joined by Councilmember Chin. Also, Councilmember Jonai is joining us by phone. And I know that there are several questions that my colleagues have. And since I'm deemed to stay for the entirety of the hearing, I'd like to give them an opportunity. But one of the questions I kind of want to ask up front is, basically the federal government has guaranteed to us that we will be getting, hold on one second, team, has been given, they're letting us know that there'll be billions of dollars spent on infrastructure over the next coming decade. And the MWBE representation in those contracts is incredibly important. And I'm very concerned that if we can't get it right here now, post-pandemic, when the influx of federal dollars come down, then we're not going to be positioned correctly. So the woefully underrepresentation in this last cycle sets off a ton of bells and whistles for me, knowing that the federal government has made this commitment to infrastructure building, knowing that more millionaires will be made in the city of New York over the next decade than any time in the city's history, and to be so underrepresented MWBE wise. I'm just curious as to what HPD thinks about that and how we got to this place where the numbers are down so much from the last reporting year.
Councilman, thank you for your question. And just to clarify the last part of the question, when you say the numbers are down, you're referring to the numbers that you mentioned earlier relating to the comptroller's report. Just to clarify the numbers that you're talking about.
I'm sorry, yes, the comptroller's report, which details that, I don't have the percentages in front of me, but we are down considerably from the previous reporting year. And obviously I'm going to factor in the pandemic and the halt of some development, but I'm not going to leave it there. Like, I want you to explain to me, quite frankly, how we are down so much on a very laudable goal of MWB participation. And I'm shocked and horrified. I'm on my way out, but this is still a very important issue for me, especially since I know about the $1 trillion of spending that the federal government has committed to for infrastructure building.
Thank you for that clarification, Councilman. Perhaps let me try and respond to the first part of the question and the concern that you have about the representation. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't have the data on the breakdown at the moment, which is something that we can provide to you at a later time. But I will say this, that absent the data, we are cognizant that not all MWBs are the same. Some will require more support and attention than others, and to ensure that they seize on the opportunities. Our processes and programs are designed to ensure that attention is given not just to big picture, but to each group of MWBs to ensure that no one is left behind.
So that brings me back to my previous question about, which is really important, how many of those, that small, seemingly paltry number, and I'm going to give you a chance to address that at a later date, how many of those are actually prime contracts, right? Because that's the issue we've been facing as a city, and we kind of keep dancing around that. And I know for a fact that between SBS and HPD, we've been trying diligently to put these companies in the prime contracting pipeline and fast track to some instances. But I know that we're still, of that number, I bet you, that 200 or some odd number, I bet you that the lion's share of them are subs, which still is greatly concerning moving forward. So I don't want to be the proverbial dead horse here, but these are major concerns for the city. A rising tide lifts all boats, and the fact that we have this in the queued up, and we literally seem like we're not ready to maximize the participation for this particular demographic is disturbing.
Thank you again for that clarification, Councilman. And I note your concern, and like I said before, I will definitely respond to you with more details on that end. But to the second part of your question, which is something that I also wanted to just point to on the numbers, I did look at the comptroller's report, and the two reports, the numbers that the Mayor's Office of Contracts would normally publish is a little bit different than the numbers that are being calibrated on the comptroller's report. Because sometimes you might have a commitment, and because it passes one fiscal year to the next, it doesn't get picked up in a particular year. But even when I look at the report that the comptroller published, looking at the numbers closely, even in fiscal year 2021, while they have a D grade is there, when you look at the percentage of utilization, compared to the previous year before, it's 45 and 41%. And if you factor in the pandemic there, you can see that the utilization there necessarily is not that far off. But the methodology is a little bit different in the way these numbers are calibrated. If you go back to 2014 here again, you will see that overall the utilization was at 6.17%. But then when you look into the details, you will see there was one large standard service contract, multi-year contract that sort of throws the numbers out of whack. None of that is to say that again, we take seriously our efforts to ensure that overall, we're not just hitting the overall goal in our MWB utilization, but we're paying attention to do the best that we can to make sure that all the different groups, minority groups of MWBEs are getting a fair shot at the opportunities.
So this is why I hate statistics, because clearly we're saying here that, you know, they can be, you know, they can obviously be manipulated, right? So anecdotally, I know for a fact that there is less participation because I have to interact with, in my current role and my role as the MWBE Task Force Chair, those two intersections tell me that there are glaring disparities in the utilization rate for MWBEs in city contracting. And then my colleague pointed out his numbers, which he got from your open data portal, right? So that's not even like made up. He like literally, while we were sitting here, went onto the site and got those numbers. So they're your numbers. So please, going forward, we have to make a more aggressive effort to include our MWBE contractors. Like, you know, this portion of the narrative around helping communities of color starkly leaves out businesses and the ability for MWBEs to participate in a city with a $98 billion budget, and we're at 2% in some instances, right? And again, I know that the numbers can be manipulated and the statistics can be skewed, but anecdotally, I talk to these men and women every single day in their companies. Some are going under at a time when building is at an all-time high, and at a time when trillions of dollars are in the pipeline. That seems ridiculous for me in a city, and I want to be able to do this. So I'm going to take this opportunity to move on and get some council member questions, and I'll come back to my questions since I'm relegated to being here for the entirety of this hearing. If any of my colleagues have questions or are in the queue, committee counsel, can you please let us know if there are some?
Yes, Chair. Next, we will hear from Councilmember Brooks Powers. As a reminder, Councilmember, we will be limiting questions to 5 minutes unless the Chair decides to extend the time. Councilmember Brooks Powers, you may begin when the sergeant's call time.
Time starts now.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chairs Cornegy and Kalos and the committee staff for convening today's hearing. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to ask questions. In 2017, Mayor de Blasio pledged to phase out the use of cluster sites and hotels and sheltering our city's unhoused population, and to replace them with 90 shelter facilities citywide by 2023, with at least one facility in each community district. The city has continued contracting with hotels to provide shelter since making this pledge. For example, as recently as September, the Department of Social Services has transferred dozens of unhoused people to the La Quinta Hotel in Edgemere, in my district. These decisions have been made on short notice and without community involvement, but more importantly, on today's discussion, they run counter to the goal of phasing out the hotels. I'm concerned that the city is not taking appropriate steps towards achieving their goal. I would like to discuss how the administration chooses to initiate, enforce, renew, and terminate its contracts. And the questions that I have in addition to that are, why is the hotel phase out deadline 2023 and not sooner? As the deadline approaches, how is the administration coordinating their current contracts with hotels and other facilities? Is the administration working to terminate these existing contracts in alignment with the 2023 deadline? If so, how? And is the administration entering new contracts with hotels and other facilities? Thank you.
Councilwoman Powers, thank you for your question. The direct response to your question is something that is outside of my portfolio. I've made note of the question, and I'm happy to pass that on to the respective personnel for them to get back to your office with a response.
And Chair, if I may, I asked that we set a time frame in which we can expect to get a response to my questions. I find that in particular with HPD, I have not received timely, if at all, responses to inquiries that I've sent to the agency. So if we can just set it to say that within a week, I can expect to get responses to my questions, I'd appreciate that.
Noted, Councilwoman Powers.
So to Councilwoman Powers' point, it's a little discouraging. I don't think we blindsided any agency about the questions that are coming. So, you know, preparation is incredibly important for members and also for agencies. There's no secret what we're demanding in terms of information. I find it on my way out, this has been 8 years of this, a little bit distressing that every time we get to a hearing, either the commissioners and or deputy commissioners are saying that they don't have that information readily available or something else. And, you know, we're advocates for the communities that we serve in, and me as the chair housing and buildings for the entire city and its housing and buildings portfolio and stock, and my inability to deliver answers to questions that are formulated through the relationships that we all have in the city is a little bit disturbing. So you're not alone, Councilmember Brooks Powers, in your demand for timely response to the questions that we're answering. And we've worked together as units. Me now for 4 years in this role, but 8 years in the council. You know what questions we're going to ask. I don't think Councilmember Brooks Powers asked, you know, some astronomical question from out of nowhere. These are questions that, you know, we ask, we send to your offices prior to even the meetings that we have. So, you know, just note that, please.
Chair,
Yes.
sorry, Chair, sorry to interject. One thing I do want to know is, I understand that the Assistant Commissioner is saying these questions are out of his portfolio, but at a bare minimum, understanding if the administration is entering into new contracts with hotels and other facilities, I think at a bare minimum, in an oversight hearing for contracts, we should be able to even get a response to that at a minimum, as well as understanding like this phase out plan, because this is a contract and this administration is coming to a close. So one would think that these are bare basic information that they should be able to answer.
Councilmember Brooks Powers, listen, when we did in-person hearings, the agencies, including HPD, would commit to by the end of the hearing. When we're in person, you got 16 people with you, and they all kind of huddle up and get us the information. I'm asking that you do that virtually. So you got to reach out to your staff in your office. It shouldn't be that difficult to, at the bare minimum, answer the question that Brooks Powers has put forward today about hotels. That's a reasonable question. So I'm going to go ahead and press a little bit and say, if we were in person, you would huddle up and get us the answer to that question. I'm asking you to do that virtually, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councilmember Brooks Powers. We'll now move to questions from Councilmember Chin. Councilmember Chin, you can begin when the sergeant's called time.
All right, starts now.
Thank you, Chair, for holding this hearing today. Assistant Commissioner, in your testimony, you talked about in 2014 that HPD launched the Building Opportunity Program. There was a building featuring a capacity building course. And like in this past 7 years, you only hosted 5 classes of participants, totaling 110 firms served. So I guess my question is like, why is it so few classes? And also, do you have any kind of data showing how many of these firms actually got contract with HPD or with developers, and how many of them were really actually, got some work and capacity were built that they were able to bid for contracts?
Councilwoman, thank you for the question. The HPD's Building Opportunity Program offers a 10-session workshop that designed for MWBs and not-for-profit developers seeking opportunities and exposure to best practices in affordable housing development. The course exposes participants to affordable housing and finance, asset and property management, and how to position their businesses for effective joint ventures and public-private partnership. It is taught by HPD staff that developers would potentially work with on future development projects, as well as other professionals in the affordable housing field. The course includes opportunities for networking and informal mentorship. A brief application is required at the start of each cohort, which occurs every 12 to 18 months. And again, because it's a 10-session program. And so that would explain that from the 2014 up until now, the number of sessions that you alluded to. In terms of the breakdown of the numbers that you're asking for, I don't have that level of details with me at the moment, and that is something that we could certainly get back to you on.
I mean, that's something that, I'm a little frustrated with my colleague. I mean, when you put that in the testimony, you should know that we want more detail. It sounds, like it's a lot, but it's not. I mean, you're talking about in the last 6-7 years, 110 firms. Well, how many of them were successful? Like, I hope HPD should be capturing this data, finding out that these groups that you have, worked with and trained, how many of them actually got connected with a private developer or the joint project? I mean, those are the success stories that you need to be capturing and sharing it with us. Because, a lot of the MWB group do need, and nonprofit group, they do need help. And we just hope that the city would do more to create opportunities for them. And that's why, it'd be good to really find out more detail. And also, like within 6-7 years, we only just, even though it's 10 sessions, but only 5 classes, means that you're only doing, less than 1 a year. And that is not sufficient. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge the presence of Councilmember Grodenchik, Councilmember Barron, and Councilmember Gennaro.
Thank you, Chair.
I guess the commissioner will get back to us.
Sorry, Councilwoman, sorry about that. Yes, I've heard your comment at the end, and I can assure you that we will get that information to you because I do not have it at the moment.
Thank you, Commissioner. If any council members want to ask additional questions, please use the Zoom raise hand function. If not, I will turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. In frustration, we've submitted questions for the agency. I've submitted questions for the agency. We can actually move on. I have no more questions.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In that case, we will now move to the public testimony portion of the hearing. I'd like to remind everyone that unlike our in-person council hearings, we'll be calling on individuals one by one to testify. So once your name is called, a member of the staff will unmute you, and the Sergeant at Arms will set the timer and announce that you may begin. Your testimony will be limited to 5 minutes. We would now like to call upon Evelyn Orange to testify, followed by Diana Prashad and Jennifer and Garcia. Evelyn Orange, you may begin when the sergeant's call time.
Time starts now.
It appears that Ms. Orange is no longer with us, so we will move to Diana Prashad, followed by Jennifer Ann Garcia, and then Chris Wadello. Diana Prashad, you may begin when the sergeant's call time.
Time starts now.
It looks like Ms. Prashad is also not with us. Give us 1 minute. So from the public, we would like to call upon Chris Wadello and then Jennifer Ann Garcia.
I'm sorry, before you move forward, Councilor, did you have a question? Okay, sorry. I thought you physically raised your hand.
Okay, well, we're going to move to the public testimony. So Chris Wadello, you may begin when the sergeant's call time.
Time starts now.
Hi, good morning, Chair Cornegie and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Chris Wadello. I'm the Director of External Affairs for NISAF over the affordable housing trade industry here in New York. We have over 400 members, and we have everybody from developers to lenders, investors, attorneys that interface with the affordable housing industry. I want to thank you for holding this hearing on an important topic around MWBE developers and contractors and how we open up more opportunities for them in the affordable housing world. It's a big goal for our association. It's something that we actively work on. We have a number of networking and membership events focused on MWBE engagements to link them to more established firms, so they can have opportunities to work on HPD and HCR projects. We've been long advocating for the removal of barriers to get MWBE certified, businesses certified at both the city and the state level. It's often a process that hinders their ability to get these jobs in the industry. And we try to take a very proactive approach, but we know that this is just not enough, that more needs to be done. So one of the things that I wanted to discuss was around working with major financial institutions and some of them have taken steps towards diversity, equity, and inclusion goals in the development space. But these commitments need to be matched with a more attainable underwriting standards in order to see results. So if you were to develop or buy a piece of real estate, there are requirements around equity investment and financial guarantees that must be provided. Bank credit risk departments want to know what the developer has and do they have the wherewithal to invest the required equity and to stabilize and compete for the project in case of overruns or delays. The net worth and liquidity covenants are pretty significant. So for example, in New York City, a $30 million development is not really considered very large, yet the net worth required for this deal would be 7.5 million and the cash liquidity would be 1.5 million. So these are prohibitive figures for many smaller and minority-led firms. The Neighborhood Entrepreneur Program pioneered by HPD, net worth and liquidity requirements were greatly reduced, and the program had participation by a great many women and minority-led development firms as a result. HPD and HDC again has the power to shape financial guarantee requirements and ensure minority and women-led firms get appropriate share of the business. So we here at NISAF, along with our board chair, who remains personally committed to this issue, his name's Kirk Goodrich, are happy to discuss this and other ideas with the council. And we'd really like to see this conversation continue. Thank you.
Chris, do you have written recommendations to submit?
Yes, I've submitted a copy of the testimony, which is a little bit more detailed, but I can also connect your office or set something up with Kirk, who's put a lot of time and research into this as to what it would look like. Be more than happy to share that with you, Chair.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Wadello. If any council members have questions, please use the Zoom raise hand function now. Seeing no hands raised, we will now one more time try to call upon Diana Prashad to testify. Ms. Prashad? She is no longer available. So with that, this concludes the public portion of the testimony today. If we've inadvertently forgotten to call upon someone to testify, if that person could use the Zoom raise hand function to raise their hand now, and we will call upon you.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, Mrs. Prashad is
Hello?
here. Okay, Diana Prashad, you may begin your testimony when the sergeant's call time.
Time starts now.
Good morning, all. My name is Diana Pritchard. On December 2nd, 2021, the city and online newspaper published a piece on my experience as a minority in the subtext of affordable housing. I have included this article as an attachment to my testimony. This article, however, represents only a partial rendering of my experience as a black female, a minority, who participated in the HPD first-time homeowner venture in 2007 called Ocean Villa. In good faith, but have faced retaliation by HPD for being a whistleblower to 11 years of negligence and then monitoring and enforcing owners' occupancy clause in their contract, which has left myself and roughly 195 other homeowners in this development dealing with.
Oh my
the
God,
reality
Gio, you don't know about Bodega Truck?
of a community that has exploited with the conversion of these homes into rentals, which has adversely affected the property values and even the safety of remaining homeowners. While this story focused only on my current predicament with one such homeowner, namely the one whose home is attached to mine, it does not record that the issues of these conversions dated back as far as 2012. It does not record that there are other errant homeowners on my block and that this practice of illegal conversions dated back to 2012, a decade ago, and has gained traction over the years with yet other homeowners converting their homes into rental properties and using these grant-funded first-time homes as collateral for loans to purchase homes in other states and other neighborhoods where they have relocated to. Moreover, despite these secondary mortgages being recorded under the SSN in the city property records, HPD has looked the other way for over a decade now, allowing select homeowners to profiteer while holding the rest of us to the ladder of the contracts. Despite safety issues that we are experiencing due to the influx of the city homeless clientele illegally being placed into these homes, and they are targeting homeowners in compliance. My story was first brought to this committee on November 9th, 2021, where my council member, Ms. Powell Brooks, testified on my 20-month and counting ordeal with HPD, requesting that HPD provide a response to specific questions, which the chairman, Mr. Carnegie, promised that he would provide support in her receiving the answers she sought. In exactly 48 hours, a month will have expired since this request, for which HPD has remained mute. I would like to know, Mr. Chairman, have you kept your promise to me and my councilwoman to assist in our fight for partiality and justice? As it stands today, I'm still experiencing the same self-issues that I have had for the past 20 months, being threatened with physical violence, intimidation, habitual disturbance with quality of life issues from the same self-DSS clientele, the totality of which has adversely affected my employment and continues to adversely affect my employment. My experience entering into a contract with New York City also highlights the lack of accountability by New York City agencies. As a first-time home buyer, I signed several contracts with HPD which enumerate an enduring list of responsibilities on me as a moderate to low-income buyer, including an owner occupancy clause for 25 years. HPD was designated monitor and enforcer of this convent and as well underwritten a good faith expectation of monitoring and enforcement by HPD, which were not met. Thus, while as a contractee I was required to honor all contractual obligations to the city, they failed in their obligations to me, and even when the issues of ongoing contractual breaches were brought to their attention, continued to ignore these irrespective of their impact of my safety, quality of life, and my employment. The excuse was that as an NYC entity, monitoring enforcement may or was discretionary, not mandatory for HPD, irrespective, of course, to contractees such as myself in compliance. Thus, as a homeowner, while I must abide by every aspect of my contract, this same reliance is remiss in HPD monitoring and enforcement per their contractual obligations by incorporating such as may as precursors to their obligation, expressing the possibility to neglect the reality of their contractual obligations prospectively. HPD should not be allowed to mislead prospective homeowners by creating one-sided contract that places an inundating amount of restrictions and responsibilities on low-income prospective homeowners while shielding themselves. They should not be allowed to underwrite that they are endowed with monitoring and enforcement responsibility, yet remiss in their contracted duties in minority communities after money is exchanged. New York city agencies should be held both accountable and
Time
liable for
expired.
failing to live up to their contracted obligations and good faith expectations of all homeowners and failing to live up to their contracted obligations. Irrespective of race, color, creed, and zip code, Black communities in contracts with HPD should not be purposefully left to employed while they practice due diligence in order to preserve and safeguard other communities of a different hue. Thank you.
Ms. Prasad, I just want to answer your question. Yes, my office did follow up with HPD, and I was limited in what I could do based on pending legislation between yourself, your family, and HPD. So, but we did absolutely honor our commitment, and I'm still honoring our commitment to follow up and work on your behalf with your Councilmember Brooks Powers. There are limited. There's some limitations based on outstanding and pending litigation that you're in currently with HPD. So I apologize.
Thank you. But the only thing I want to say about that and the litigation did not stop them from doing their job months prior to us going into court and months after us appealing our decision. So they still had a responsibility and obligation to do their due diligence and removing these illegal occupants that's residing next door to us. They had more than enough time. They basically had 2 years to help and do their job and righting the wrong. And they chose not to do so because they wanted to basically retaliate against my family for just speaking out against what they've done to us. They had enough time to do this, and the litigation is no excuse. They are currently in court for other matters with other entities, and they're still going ahead and doing their jobs on a day-to-day basis. So whether I had to go to court or not, that still didn't prevent them from doing their job.
Thank you.
Furthermore, when we spoke to HPD's Chief Counsel Nicholas Lundgren, he told us that whatever litigation that we would have to pursue would have no impact on HPD doing their job.
And foreclosing.
And so I'm not understanding how come at this point my litigation is being used as an excuse. The moratorium is used as an excuse even though there are safety issues involved here, and there have been safety issues for 21 months now.
And in July 30th, with HPD, Commissioner Louise Carroll.
I didn't bring that up as an excuse for HPD's behavior. I was informing you of my limited ability to work in the context because of the litigation. So that was not an excuse. I'm not making excuses for HPD and their responsibilities. That was not my intent at the time, and I can't on this hearing relitigate what's happening. So okay. I'm apologizing. I'm saying that I understand the litigation, but it provided limitations for myself and my office, not from them doing their job, not from them honoring their commitments. That's not what I was saying at all.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate your support, and we'll continue on. There'll be more news stories coverage of our matter if they don't do the right thing. But thank you again, and y'all have a blessed day.
Thank you for your testimony. Today's Housing and Buildings hearing, if there are no more testimonies and nobody else in the queue, thank you all for testifying. Thank you for staying the majority of the hearing, especially Councilmember Chin, who troops it out with me almost every single time.